Picture yourself walking down an abandoned calf lane where rampant trash pandas rule and are scattering trash all about a place which is home to a community which you love. Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Robine, and I'm going to be sharing a story and a lesson that I learned over these pandemic months. This is a huge honor to get to speak to you all today, and before I get started, I just want to say that I miss you all, and I have a huge desire for the Lord to find this community faithful. So with that said, hear these words with love. Today, I want to be talking about returning to community and hope in the reconciliation of all things. So before I get started, I just want to give a brief overview of the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. So you have the Israelites, which are God's chosen people, and they're in the Promised Land. And for reasons that are really hard to explain in like 5 minutes, God decides to purify and judge his people by allowing the Babylonians to come and conquer them. And when they get conquered, they get taken off into slavery in the city of Babylon. And so they're all gone from Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is left desolate. So eventually the Persians come and conquer the Babylonians. And this is where the books of Ezra and Nehemiah come in, because the Persians had less of a desire to keep the Israelites away from their homeland. So small groups of them were allowed to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the city and the Jewish community. So the books of Ezra and Nehemiah focus in on 3 leaders, which all had the same goal in common. They all wanted to provoke faithful obedience to the Torah and rebuild Jewish community. And the Bible Project has a really good video on these leaders, and in it explains how none of these leaders really accomplished what they had set out to do. And so it's kind of an anticlimax. It leaves you hoping for something else in the future. But at the end, Nehemiah tours Jerusalem and finds that all the work that he and his other leaders had done to restore Jewish community had been undone. And in chapter 13, verse 14, he says, "Remember me, O my God, concerning this. Do not wipe out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God and for its service." Again, in verse 31, he says, "Remember me, O my God, for good." We'll come back to these verses in just a second. But with that basic framework, now I want to jump into my story. So when y'all packed up and left campus around March time last year, your boy was still coming to work on campus. I work for public safety, and so I was still coming on to campus frequently. And so in the peak of isolation, it was desolate on campus. I would be walking around and constantly having flashbacks to when there were people there, and you see, having a community is such a grace. And sometimes I'd be walking through Brown Chapel, just remembering times with the Lord, and or down Calf Lane, just conversations I've had with people. Sometimes I would even walk through like the res halls. I remember once I even walked through Hendricks 2nd North, which is where I lived my freshman year, and just remembered like each person that lived on that hall. So things eventually started to lighten up. I remember seeing some people I knew at the drive-through commencement, and then eventually a first wave of people were allowed to move in, primarily nursing majors, and so it was nice to see familiar faces on campus again. And then again, eventually a second wave of people were allowed to move in, primarily freshmen. And it was just great to see those people coming back. And now I know many of you are still at home waiting for the moment when we can all come back. But yeah, we're all praying as a community. No matter where you are, we are still a community, praying for each other, reaching out to each other. I encourage you, like, if you know someone that you haven't seen or talked to in a long time, like, reach out. But I feel like that was really common in the beginning of pandemic, but not so much anymore. So I'm sure you're starting to catch my drift, the comparison that I'm making between these two things. I'm not saying that the pandemic is divine judgment. That I'm not taking a position on that. That's a whole other topic. But I am saying that we are a community of faith, which has been physically apart for a very long time, and it's looking like we may all be together again soon. And so I just wanted to look at what Nehemiah says about coming back to community. And specifically, I have 3 things. So first of all, I just urge you all, don't take after the example of the Israelites. You know, we have this new opportunity to be more than what we were before pandemic, and to serve more faithfully than we did. You see, the Israelites, they fell back into things that they had been doing before their exile. So I urge you guys, like, if there's something that you could be doing to recognize the grace that the Lord has given us in community, do that, you know. Yeah, I urge you guys, like, lukewarmness is not a good response to the grace that is community. You know, be the one that makes the 5 more talents in the community which you find yourself. Secondly, if coming back to community doesn't look all of what you thought it would, take heart, you know. It wasn't easy for Ezra and Nehemiah to come back and find community to be not what they thought it was going to be. The Lord sees your good deeds, and you know, I just pray for you all that you continue to have endurance to do what is good, even if things around you aren't looking good. Finally, I just want to say, put your trust in Jesus, and that He will be the one who makes all things right. You know, it seems that this year has been really rough. There's the pandemic, you know, a lot of interesting circumstances in the political world, and yeah, 2020, it's just weird. And so I can't find any verses in the Bible that say that, like, your circumstance is going to get better before we see Jesus again. But, you know, maybe you've been struggling with loneliness. Maybe college hasn't been all that you thought it was going to be, or the pandemic stole away your golden years. Or maybe death or sickness has touched your life. I can say, though, that we have a hope in Jesus, and that He will make all things right. You see, by His blood we are made new on the inside, and then one day He will see us again. We will see Him again, and He will wipe away every tear from the eyes of His bride. So guys, that is our hope, and praying for you guys. Love you all. Hope to see you all again soon in person. God bless.
We're grateful to Jonathan for that word of encouragement and challenge this week. Reminded that community is a grace, something to give thanks to God for, to not take for granted. And in this season where we still are separated in so many ways, that we would not neglect to check in with each other. That maybe in the next few days, you just create some space for God to lay some names and faces on your hearts and minds, and that you'd take that as an impetus to reach out, to check in, to be honest, to encourage one another, to bear one another's burdens. And I pray that for your life this week, as Jonathan said, that you will open yourself up to God and continue to seek God, that you might live a faithful and obedient life. God wants to do something beautiful in and through you. God bless you.